Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Giz and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and we are here for our Thirst Fest segment, a romance genre reading challenge, where I have buddied up with Kim from Native Lady Book Warrior to read When Stars Have Teeth. I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis just real quick before we start. Buffy Yellowbird knows exactly what she wants. She went to college, got her degree, moved to the city, and found a big girl job. Working at the San Francisco Urban Indian Center is a dream come true, except that it constantly fans the flames of anger stuck in her belly. Thanks to a non native board, Buffy spends every day fighting for the community to have what they need, with each day at work as terrible as a Monday. Buffy doesn't have time for a relationship. She barely has time for her siblings. Santiago Morales is an ultra-suave immigration lawyer that keeps showing up in Buffy's life. Despite his playboy looks, Santiago is a family man ready to settle down. Unable to resist one another, the two agree on an associates with benefits arrangement that quickly dissolves the walls between them. Before long, Buffy finds herself craving Santiago for more than a romp in the sheets. Their associates arrangement was evolving into something more. Faced with accepting the darkest parts of herself or leaving Santiago behind forever, Buffy must decide if she is worthy of love. And bringing my guest on. Hey, Kim.
Hi, sorry I muted myself there for a minute.
That's okay. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just well for you all watching or for those of you joining the recording, um it's been like more than a year since I've been on a live. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And it was weird because yesterday a lot of people were tagging me on some stuff and sending me messages and saying like Happy Native American Heritage Day. And I had no idea. I know there's a month. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know there was actual specific days. So that was pretty cool. So I was like, oh yeah,
You're busy.
I know. I was just yeah, we're pretty busy. I think ever since like the communities opened back up
Mhm.
and like I mean, we're still taking like COVID precautions in some instances, but um a lot of our ceremonies and our cultural obligations and all those things started back up again. So we've been really busy. I swear, like for the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, there's been something like every weekend. So and not just with me, but my kids too. So it's been pretty hectic.
Yeah. All right. So before you dig in, did you want to give a non-spoiler review, a little short review?
Okay, so what do you want me to mention? Like a review. Oh,
Just,
okay,
just like a
okay.
short little overall non-spoiler. I always chop this up between like non-spoiler and spoiler, and then we'll like chat away, but just like a little overall
Okay.
thought.
Yeah, so it's like this book is like female and male relationship. And I think for me, it was interesting. So I and this person, and it was split, right? There's two perspectives, but it's not in first person, right? I don't think it's told in first person because I didn't see a lot of I.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't see a lot of that, but it's in a urban population within. It takes place in San Francisco, and the female main lead, she's actually from a res called Budgeberry. So if you read the first book, you'll know where she's from because this first book, it happens with these two main characters, but the male lead is the brother of the female main lead for this book, When Stars Have Teeth. So I thought that was like pretty cool. I thought it was just going to be, a completely separate couple, but it's actually, there's a link there between these two storylines. And so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, and there's just this, this girl, this young lady, and I think she's in her late 20s, right? Mid to late 20s. And she's, of course, working at an urban Indian center. And it sort of reminded me of this other um, indigenous romance. Oh my gosh, I can see it. I see what the cover is like. It's almost like an AI cover or a Photoshop cover or photo stock, and um, that whole series takes place. That center is the urban Indian center. So
Yeah.
Buffy is the female main character. She's working at this native urban Indian center, and she's her job is to obtain funding. And the male lead is an immigration lawyer, but he's also an indigenous Latin character, and I think he's both Pueblo and he has Latin roots in, you know, I think Mexico. And they meet by chance because they're both trying to help one person at this center. Him on the immigration side, and then her being at this center trying to find this person housing and resources. And then they end up, trying to figure out, or especially her, or maybe it's him more
Yeah.
about this, not friends, but a couple with benefits, like no relationship ties whatsoever, not wanting to start a relationship. And yeah, and they're just like navigating that throughout this whole um it's not really that well, it kind of gets messy in a certain
Yeah.
areas.
As it does.
Yeah, and I think what I would recommend is reading this book because you actually um with Callahan, I think that's his name. His nickname's Cal, this guy. And it dives into their background, which is their parents
Yeah.
and what happened and why Buffy is having a hard time like establishing any kind of permanence or grounding, especially when it comes to relationships. So it's for me, the indigenous relationship part, the family part for me was very good. I loved it. It was incredible. I very much enjoyed it. In terms of the couple stuff, and this is funny. I was just telling Leslie that I read a lot of dark romance, and I like messy. I like complex. I don't like where each character is just especially in a couple or even in a polyamorous relationship where everybody is perfect. To me, that is just so boring. So I actually enjoyed the dynamic. Um, and there was parts that were kind of like not really so predictable. I think I at the end of the book I kind of figured I was like, okay, it might be hitting this way that way, but yeah, I think for me I pretty much enjoyed it. The writing was good too. So I was telling Leslie, I was like, I read some romances where the writing is just so bad. And I don't even get to chapter two. Like I don't even finish chapter one. I'm like, oh, like, all right, I'm deleting this from my Kindle. I'm putting this back on the shelf. And for me, like if I'm gonna read a romance, it has to at least for me to like finish it and want to like be committed to finishing all the way through. It has to have good writing, and this had that, so that was a plus for me. Um, yeah. So go ahead, Leslie. I'll
All
pass it
right.
over to you. I feel like I've been talking for a bit.
No, no, I'm glad. I love that. I need all the um all right, so here's my initial impression. I enjoyed the world building. I just feel like we're not seeing what the type of world building that the author did. We don't see enough of it, and I felt like it was very realistic to the diversity of the community. And I really enjoyed the intersectionality when it comes to the character's identity, and as well as the secondary characters. Some of the world building that started out at the beginning wasn't really like threaded throughout the story.
Yeah.
It felt like a little bit disjointed. Um, I appreciated the LGBTQ rep. I did have issues with the primary characters we're following, which we'll get into. But I do agree. I do like messy characters. It wasn't really that, but I promise we'll get into that. Um, there is something that happens like at the beginning and then towards the end that had me not rooting for the relationship, basically.
Mhm.
Ultimately, the story relies on too much like not miscommunication, but like a lack of communication. And I'm not really a fan of that. And then what else? I think I might leave it there as far as my non-spoiler chat is
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be.
and I agree with you about the first part being fully fleshed out. So I don't know if, and I was telling Leslie, I don't know if I have, because the version I read was an arc. So I don't know how much has changed from the arc to the printed version. But I kind of felt the same. I felt like because within this book, they actually build the characters and the worlds a little bit more, especially I think her name is Shiomara Chavez. They really get into like her passion, what she does as a profession, learning about, archaeology. I think, and then you end up rooting for her, because you get to learn about her background. Not right away. I feel like the author does really amazing with the first book and just feeding you bits and pieces. Like as something is going on with this character, but you just don't know what. Like what have they gone through? That's why, they're having issues. Um, and the same with
Yeah.
Cal. So, but this book, I felt like we're just kind of thrown into this, and then all of a sudden, this relationship already begins, or a hint at what is coming. So I kind of felt the same way. I felt like the beginning was really rushed. I would have loved to like sit and be comfortable, get to know these characters separately before they meet. I think that would have I think that would have had me falling in love with this book a little bit harder. But yeah, I noticed that too.
All right. Um, yeah, I'm gonna ask one more question and then I'll put the spoiler up.
Mhm.
So as just I try to ask like one question that kind of like engages us both in a way. Early on, there's like a young man that comes to the center and he has a meal that reminds him of home. Is there a particular meal that when you eat it, it just transports you to home, like wherever you're at?
For me, oh yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I think for me, probably anything to do with blue corn. Um, like that's a staple of where I'm from. We make all these different kinds of dishes, like traditional dishes in my community from corn. And it could be the corn itself. It could be where we take the corn, we roast it, we grind it, and we use the meal for different dishes. Yeah, so I think corn is a huge one, like especially hominy. Hominy, we use it in a lot of different stews, whether if that's sheep or elk or deer. And it's a stew called or Hopis call it nakwabi, but Tewas call it dusele. And I think that dish is just, like if I were to when I was in college in the city, and someone would bring me that dish home, or back down to the city for me to just enjoy because I couldn't make it back for whatever reason, and I would be really happy. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't ate this in a while. But then I would also be like, dude, I miss home so much. So it was kind of like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, oh man, I bet this tastes so much better, like right when it was made. But yeah, and I could just see and feel and taste all the love that has gone into that dish, because or that whatever food I'm eating, because it's a long process, because a lot of our families, we don't, are especially the traditional families, they use the corn that's grown from their own fields, and
Mhm.
even that process is a long process, prepping the corn and getting them ready to eat. But yeah, that's probably like, but yeah, that was another thing I enjoyed about this book, is reading about the food.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Oh my gosh, I want to try that," or "I want to see how hot that chili is." But yeah, there was like every time there's comments about the food, I just kind of get really happy.
Hey, just really quick, say hello. Hi, good morning, sexy lady. She has a YouTube channel as well. I'm gonna go ahead and put the spoilers up because we're headed into that territory. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and share a quote just to kind of like expand on what you're saying, how you enjoy the writing so much. So the quote is Buffy dissolved in his embrace like cotton candy on her tongue. The smell of pan dulce and eucalyptus surrounded her, sugar dancing into her veins. So I love the way she writes like those moments that would just like really suck me into the story.
Yeah, that one was really good, but also when she's talking with the grandmother and they're talking about the stars, like basically why the title is what it is. And that
Yeah.
was really good. I was like, "Oh my goodness, that was so good." And usually, I see when people, especially romance writers, they talk about like the title and it's just kind of thrown in there like whatever. But
Mhm.
for the grandmother to talk about why stars have teeth or just stars in general, it was just really cool. I was just like, oh, I kind of like melted and then reread that part. And I think that was like a really strong point for me. And that is one thing about Native families and Native relationships is when you start dating somebody, it's like it's almost like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is it gonna be like when I take this person home?" Because especially when you get into a relationship, it's a serious relationship, you're not just dating that person, you're dating their whole family. Um, Especially where I'm from, like, the so, like, if especially if so for instance, I have 2 sons. So, if one of my sons brings someone home, like, his paternal side, they'll hate me. Because that's their nephew. And that we call that side. So basically, all his aunts on his dad's side, or his godfather's side, will be upset. They'll tease her. They'll say all kinds of stuff to her, kind of like testing her. But mainly, it's kind of like showing their love for
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know their nephew. Um, and and it's funny because I've have like nieces and nephews right now, like, no, I'm not bringing them over here, you know what I mean? So it's serious, like when you meet the significant other and you see relationships, I saw that in this book, especially with how significant it is, especially to introduce someone that you like to an elder. That is huge. So I kind of that was like, oh, like, whoa, he's already bringing her. That was kind of funny for me. Like he's already bringing her to me, his grandma. So, but yeah, that was kind of cool. So, but I
That's
can kind of see the nuances in the writing.
yeah, I think maybe this is what's going on for me. That was like one of the it's like it's both. I love meeting his abuela and I like that whole interaction, like the whole basis for the name of the book like really worked for me. Um but I felt like since Buffy like cuz we know more about Buffy than Santiago does. So if I'm only going by what Santiago knows, I feel like it doesn't really like make sense to introduce her to his family. And I don't know if I was just having a nice time with someone and they brought me over their families, I would have a problem with it. So it was like I have mixed
Yeah,
feelings about that scenario.
yeah, and I think a lot of it probably has to do with maybe the position that she's in. Because if you're working at a native center like that, it's so stressful.
Hmm.
You do a lot of thankless work. You're if you're a salary worker, you're definitely not making enough. If you're hourly worker, you're like a lot of the times you're like, okay, well, you don't have overtime for me, I'll volunteer, you know? So it's a lot of work that definitely goes over, a 40-hour week. It just becomes like your whole life, and it takes a definite interesting um person to have a position like that. And
Yeah.
then to see, um, and I'm sure he probably doesn't know a lot about her, but I'm sure he's hearing stuff from people at the center because
Yeah.
Native people talk.
Yeah.
We tell each other everything, and then we're like, oh, did you see her? Like even all the bad things, you know. So I can imagine, probably at that center, because he's an immigration lawyer. Not only was she working with Clara, but also his grandmother. So I'm pretty sure he's hearing stuff like about her, like maybe how busy she is, and like she's probably not this, person who just sits on her butt and is just collecting a check, but she really
Yeah.
cares about
Yeah.
about the Native community. And you could tell too by the way people react to her, especially remember that weird little link with Myra. Is it Myra or Mira?
Yeah.
um I'm sure she told, him, but him not connecting, like, oh, is this the person that you're always talking about? So I think he's probably getting the layers,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he also knows that she's closed off in some way. I mean, he gets it right away. She's like, I don't want to date. Nope. Like, um, so I think he's just hoping that he'll not break her down, but that she'll open up to him more the more he kind of like shows her how that he's there, that maybe she'll trust him just a little bit more bit by bit. But again, I get what you mean, but
Yeah. Like
so
I
for
know
me.
I know what the author was trying to get across, but it was like how to explain it. I get that she's super busy, I get stressed, and I also like everything that the author's digging into about the problematic dynamics of everyone that's on the board. But I felt like something that the author does, but I think you kind of mentioned that the author did this in Lizard Holds a Sun, is that we're not really always internally in the know with the character. Like with Buffy, I felt like that's what was going on. And so I know that there's things that Buffy isn't sharing with Santiago, but I wish the author had at least let us, the readers, in on those things about how she felt internally, or maybe let
Mhm,
us in a little bit more because I know she has this physical attraction to Santiago. I would have liked it if the author had just written more of the emotional part of it, because I don't think she really did that, and so then I could have like rooted more for the relationship.
mhm.
Does that
Yeah,
make
and I
sense?
think I think some of that, I like I got some of it. I don't know if it's maybe because I'm native,
Mhm.
like especially if you don't if you don't care about a person and you're native, you're definitely not going to tease them. You're not going to make things, um you're not going to laugh, another thing that I saw was her, I think I feel like with native communities, how we show our love is through like subtlety, but also culture and then through action.
Mhm.
So we're not very, well, I know a lot of people, especially those who are in relationship, aren't very vocal. And I
Mhm.
think it has to do with a lot of the trauma that we have suffered as Native people. We aren't encouraged to be, loud, and especially if you've gone through like, trauma in your family, and very straightforward with how you feel. Um, or maybe it's a cultural thing. The way, like for instance, in my community, the way we show love and appreciation for someone is by showing up. We
Mhm.
show up, we work hard for them, we reciprocate when there's real ceremonies going on, um, and we say thank you, in our languages. And but that can also sometimes be a cultural barrier. For instance, my husband is Navajo, and I'm Hopi, so he kind of like in the very beginning of our marriage, he would get upset. He's like, "Where are you going again? What's happening?" And I was just like, "Well, this is happening." Like, "Oh, is that your aunt? Like, how are they related to you?" I was like, "No, that's just like our clan relative, or they did something for us when this came up, so we're gonna go reciprocate." And I feel like so it's different. I feel like I wish, the author carried some of what happened in here
Hmm.
over to the second book. I feel like that would probably give it especially Buffy, a lot more context.
It
And
would
the
have made it
thing,
probably more cohesive, right?
yeah, definitely. A little bit more streamlining these two characters and like how they dealt with grief, especially. The way Callahan in this book, how he dealt with grief is completely different than how Buffy, handled things. And so I kind of saw those things, but but I don't know if it was just because I read this book probably twice, maybe maybe three times.
I
So
think that's what I'm missing is that I didn't read that book first.
yeah, so I maybe that's where the author could probably carry some of that over, and build their background a little bit more. Because I wanted to know more about Santiago, which is the main the other main character, especially with the dynamics with his family. You only see him with his family that one time, which is at the end, and they're dynamic, and even that dynamic isn't a lot. It's kind of like a smidge, but you could see the love there, especially with how his cousin, Pear, how he feels about him, and how he's trying to say, I don't know about this, and so I
Yeah,
don't
I was
know.
team Pear the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go ahead and say hi to the chat again really quick. Let me see, where am I? Margaret stopped by. You said hello. I didn't say hello. Happy Small Business Saturday. Listening in the car. Thank you very much. Oh, interesting. Murray St. Clair's memoir touches on this about his marriage and their partnership. She's bear and their fish clan, so she reminds me what the natural relationships in between those clans. Okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna go over and okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about Santiago. Ooh, okay. What I liked about his character is that like his initial attraction to Buffy, the way that it's written, is like a genuine emotional attachment. When he
Hmm.
initially makes a move on Buffy, it's oh, this is the part that I had an issue is it's like it's supposed to be like romantic, but and the only reason why I felt like that worked was because the tone of it. But if the tone wasn't struck right, I don't think it would have worked because he kind of comes off strong. But he does understand like the emotional current of Buffy like throughout. And like on page 30, he says something like, with legs like that, I figured you rode horses. And I was like, oh my God. What did you
That's
think
so
about that?
funny. Oh, like their first initial like flirtation and them I don't know. So that was like another thing that's like, can you tell? Like there's a part of me, I was like, can you tell if someone rides horses? Like it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like because my community, like some people they ride horses and they have cattle and everything, but there is some ways you could tell, like, oh yeah, you could tell that they're a hard worker, or you could tell that they have, a steady relationship in their community with their clan membership because everybody knows them. So it's like, so that part I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Is he trying to be funny? Is he just trying to be flirtatious? So that part, like, I just kind of cracked up and I was like, oh my gosh. But then, like, and this is the part where I feel like I'm out of touch because I am, and I'll tell everybody here, I'm 40 years old. So I don't know what
Me
the
too.
dating scene is like right now. So I don't know if um I don't know like what casual dating is like because I've been with my husband for over 20 years. Not 20 years. Our daughter, oldest daughter is 20, but we've been together before that. Like we dated in high school even. So I don't know. So the dating dynamic, I don't know what that's like right now, especially in the native community. I'm just probably like, hmm. But definitely, like, I could tell this wasn't going to be a slow burn, like from the very beginning, because their personalities are very forward. Like, she's already open and very, like, honest. Like, I don't want a relationship. I just want to, do this. And he's like, okay, okay. So he gives her that, but also, like, he has this, side agenda, like, well, maybe. Oh my Market. She's like my dating community sucks, I can tell you. Yeah, so I don't know what dating is like, especially when it comes to being like online. I don't know what that is. So so when she was saying, yeah, with no commitment, no like, and there's a part in the book where he says like where he says to her, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to tell you to not date other people. I'm not going to tell you that you can't go on other dates, but I do appreciate if you're honest with me." So that
Yeah,
part, I
I like
really
that.
like that about him. Like that, not because they don't have any like, okay, well, while I'm with you, they both agree that they're not going to sleep with other people, but
Yeah.
they don't agree that they're not gonna date. You know what I mean? So that's like another thing I was like, oh, because I'm so yeah, like I'm so like in this like especially in the small community that I like, okay, like you kiss somebody, you're seen in public holding hands with them, you're stuck with that person. There's no conversation about, oh, we maybe we'll see other people, or maybe I can date other people, right? Even though we're both holding hands and everybody can see us. So it's interesting. Like now, I don't know what dating is like now. So I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. So maybe this is just like what happens. So
Yeah.
I feel like pretty old, kind of
That's
like
so
reading
funny.
about that.
Sounds good to me. Let me just go set back up on the chat real quick. Maybe one culture is franker about body comments than the other. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
3 here. Hey, Margaret, you beat us by 3 years. I'm 40. Dating sucks. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Self Pub Annie stopped by. Thank you very much. You're so lovely. I'll see you at your productivity sprints. Um, yeah, I guess when I read that, I felt like it was a combination of both of what you're saying. I thought it was like funny and teasing. And I felt like what he was really saying is that she has like strong, thick thighs. I thought that
Uh-huh.
that's what he was getting at. And that's something that he likes. So,
I
but
know.
either
And
way, I
then
was so tickled.
you should see like some of the native like memes and oh my gosh, the content that they're making now. And it's hilarious. Like some of the stuff that they say, it's and I don't know. It just cracks me up because I'm just like they're just very, especially like a lot of like Navajo content creators, they're just so frank and open and aren't scared to like say anything. They're just like, ah, I was like, oh my God. But but then like I'm trying not to laugh. But yeah, I think you're right, Margaret. I think it just kind of depends on like what culture you're from. And that's another thing with like native communities. They're just so diverse. So the way probably native people, um, the culture of native urban communities are probably, you know, like pretty different than what it's like in like a community. Not to say that neither are bad or one is better than the other. They're just different. And I think a lot of us, especially people who are going into the cities to find jobs, to find housing, to find or to be with community while they're going to school. It's just the dynamic because you're in a you know, urban area environment, it's different. It's going to be different. So I always thought like, and I noticed that too, like, it was interesting. So when I first was in college, and there would just be native guys, or native people coming up to me and being like, "Hey, you want to go eat?" Or I'm like, "Whoa, like I don't even know you. I don't even know your name, and you're asking me out." So it was really like it was just such a culture shock to have someone just come up to you and just say, "Hey, come eat with me." And I'm just like, I don't like they're native, yeah, but I don't even know you. What's your name? Like it was just funny, and I would just crack up, and I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I have to go to class. Then I would just kind of run away. But yeah, it was
Right
it was,
away.
it was pretty different. Like,
Smooth. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about Buffy. Um, Buffy is clear about her boundaries and what she doesn't want with Santiago. He acknowledges this, but continues to date her even though he wants something more. And at times, that was like part of the issues with their dynamic. The author describes a moment when Santiago's mask slips because Buffy is rejecting him, and I felt like that if you're dating someone that feels like they have to put on a mask to be in whatever the relationship dynamic is, that it isn't something like to continue. What did you think about that moment of like realizing he had like a bit of a mask with Buffy?
um, I don't know. I know for sure. Again, I don't know what it's like to date right now, but like, what do you mean in terms of his mask? Like him
I think
just not being forward and honest with what his true intentions were, or
yeah, he he's
um,
he's telling her, and speaking of her being like transparent about dating and stuff, so I appreciated it, but I think that transparency wasn't really, in some ways, wasn't really happening. Like he's saying what he's okay with, but the truth is, I don't think he is okay with some of the things that are going on because he wants something more. So he's saying
yeah,
one thing, but he's feeling another, and that made me feel bad, and it like made it hard for me to root for them because I also think
yeah,
that's not fair to Buffy that he's doing that.
hmm
I don't know if that makes any
yeah, I
sense.
don't know. Like, I think, well, how old is he? He's 35, right? And she's 28,
Yeah.
27. And I don't know, there's a part of me that was so I'm probably gonna get there's a part of me that was like seeing him able to kind of like peel layer by layer back. And there was also a part of me that was just so frustrated with her, but I got why she, was having a hard time with commitment. And I don't think she kept saying it had to do with her job and all these things. And I don't think it was that. I think she
Yeah.
was just afraid.
Yeah.
And if you read a kind of like about her backstory of what happened with her parents, and later on, also down the road, then you kind of get it. You're just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then she's also not going to open up to him and tell him like this is what's going on. And this is what's interesting about him, because he's so patient, and
Yeah.
he sees, different parts of her, and he explains that. And I wish he did that more. Like I wish that happened more, but I've probably seen him do it every now and then. But there's one part where he's talking about her, like he's saying, like, I know there's like a really good side of her. I want to see more of it. Like I've only seen snippets of it, but I want to see that more, and have her only share that with me. And she only shares that with me because she trusts me, and then likely her family, right? But and there's just a part of me also when she's just um instead of all, like what you said, being transparent with him and just ending things, she's goes and she pretty much goes on a date with another person, and then she gets busted by his cousin because I think
That
she's
was
making
funny.
out.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh my
she's
God, girl.
making out, and he just looks at her like, oh. But it, and So that part kind of cracked me up, but there's I don't know about him. I kind of wished there was a little bit more depth to his character too. Um, and I think that's why I kind of miss, like, I wish there was at least, like, 3 chapters, like, just dedicated to them. How busy they
Mm,
are, what their relationship with their family dynamic is like, why is it? Can we, maybe guess why she doesn't wanna be in a relationship? Um, or what is it that scares her? And with him too, like they say he's been in bad relationships, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I read about that too. Like where he talks
yeah.
about like maybe having a conversation with Pear, and they're saying, is this going to be
Yes.
another, and then name drop, and he's like,
Yeah.
no, this is like she's nothing like that person. So I kind of wish that happened too. Um, but yeah, it was just I don't know. I couldn't really put my finger on Santiago all that much. But I really liked um like how he was able to demonstrate and show her how much he cared. But I just wish I got a little bit more. So the character building with Santiago, I feel like wasn't fully fleshed out. Because for me, there's just there was points in the book where I'm rooting for them, and there's points where I'm like, oh, no, just leave it already. And then there's points where I'm like, oh yeah, be together. And then there's points where like, oh no, just leave it. Yeah. So I was kind of like going back and forth. It was funny.
Yeah, I think that's because it's like it's fine if the conflict's there between them. I just felt like us as readers needed to be the ones in the know. Kind of like you're saying, there either needed to be conversation between Santiago or Pear, or maybe like the inner thoughts, if it could be in on that at some point, or maybe there could be a chapter where it's actually just from Santiago's point of view, so that we could
Mhm.
get that. And then I also felt like, yeah, just some of the things that we find out about Buffy later. I felt like it would have bettered the story if we just knew earlier, and it didn't have to be something that she revealed to Santiago, because that's a part of her. She's not ready, She's
Mhm.
she's overwhelmed. She's dealing with a lot, but she's still like
Or
feeling a bit raw.
yeah, or she could have had that conversation with her best friend. That
Yeah.
dialogue could have grown a little bit more there. Or she could have had that dialogue with her brother way earlier, even though she's not picking up the phone. But I'm sure, I mean, I've left mass texts for
Yeah,
my
yeah,
sister to
voicemail.
say like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then just to have her listen to it or just read the text message, even if it's just one-sided. So I
Yeah.
think that could have probably added a little bit more to that too.
All right, I'll pop into the chat really quick. Margaret says, yeah, learning about urban culture differences with this memoir in Winnipeg, no less. Interesting organizing and community building. That's very real to the dating scene, but usually gender swapped. Oh, okay. I guess what I was talking about with Santiago. um, all right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Abuelita Paula. And there's a truck going by. I'm sorry if you hear it. um, Paula is like the connective tissue. This was beautiful, but I needed the trust and the growth of relationship to happen between Buffy and Santiago. And I felt like Abuelita was doing that for them. And also the moment Buffy leaves, when Santiago's abuela was in the like medical distress, is a moment he should have been done with her, in my opinion. But then all he does is worry about, like, after his worry about Buffy, what Buffy did in my eyes was like that moment right there. I was like, oh no, Buffy, I love you, but I'm done with you right now. And then she's in Spain, which was impulsive. And I felt like I know she's going through so much when I'm reading it. But in that moment, I was just felt like you're just thinking about I could imagine like if dating someone and their grandma's in medical distress and you had this beautiful moment with them, and then you're like, this is too much, bye. I was like, Buffy, what are you doing, girl?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that is like I was pissed off too. I was really upset that she left, but then I also remembered um like her mom dying, and like losing someone that way. I think later on she was just like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" But I think he didn't have time. Like if it were me and if that was like, my grandparent, I don't think I would be upset because I'd just be too stressed out having to just deal with
Yeah.
my relative, I especially if I was in a relationship where I didn't know where it was going. You kind of have hopes for where it was going to end up, um, but then later on you see that she apologizes. But if it were me, yeah, I'd be like, nope, I'm sorry. This is, but I guess I think another thing I thought was like, okay, she seriously hasn't settled things with her mom and that loss. So how is she going to take, what is happening to him right now? And but then I also felt like she's just so insecure, like in a way where she honestly feels like she's not good enough for him. And this was her way to like, I feel like she was just pushing the envelope further and further and further. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for him to just dump me, and
Mm,
then I'll be satisfied because I know I'm not good enough for him anyway. So I feel like she's kind of doing this really interesting, twisted thing where she's just kind of like, yeah, he's gonna realize that I'm messed up and he's just gonna let me go because it's obvious to her she can't do it. She's already, you know, tied down. Not she can't leave him. She can't say no, even though she's telling him, like, I don't want to date you, all these things, but she keeps going back to him because it feels good. But then there's that insecurity and that, you know, that self deprecation where you're just like, I'm not good enough for this. Um, this person, I'll just wait for them. I'll just make all these mistakes and I'll just let them leave me. Then I don't have to do it because I can't, because this person is amazing, you know? So I feel that's kind of like what she was doing like the whole time.
yeah,
just
yeah,
just like and she wasn't, there was part of her where she wasn't making excuses, but then she would understand how shitty she was being. But yeah, if that was me, I'd just be like, nope, I'm sorry. But I think a thing about, I don't know, and I wish I also got something from Santiago's backstory about why is he so patient?
yeah.
How is it he is able to see through her and how she's acting? Like, how is it he's able to understand she's been through something? Like, I'm pretty sure he probably had like a relationship with someone, a cousin, family member, or even a friend who pretty much maybe responded the same way to wanting to build a connection, but instead they push it away because they don't think they're good enough. So I wish I kind of got that. Like, why is he able to see through her, shitty reactions and how
Yeah.
she responds to things? So that was like another thing that I wish I got too from the book.
Yeah. Um, remember, remember, I wrote this when I was very heated at the moment when I read it. Um, so when Buffy has that moment, um, when she sees Santiago's abuela when she's passed and she has tears, um, I it was just like it just felt disjointed from the. It's not. I know she's a feeling person, but it just felt disjointed between her just meeting her, leaving the way she did, um, and the idea that someone does more for a person in death than alive didn't really sit well with me as far as moving Buffy emotionally when she passed. I don't know. I just felt like it just didn't feel earned, I guess. if that makes any sense. Something
Mhm.
about that kind of like triggered Buffy's emotions, but I think it's also probably what you're saying, which is more about the passing of Buffy's mom. But I didn't read the first book, and there's only so much that's talked about in this book. So it
Mhm.
was just hard to make that connection. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Uh, I think because I've had, you know, like personal things that I have gone through and us as a family where sometimes handling those kinds of things are, um, I think maybe it has to do with culture. Like for instance, when in my family, once someone leaves, um, we already know what to do. Like there's this whole process, these steps that we have to go through, and it just kind of becomes automatic. And a lot of the time, um, I know when on my husband's side, when he's lost people, they couldn't, cope and deal with those losses. And so there were times where I would have to kind of like step in and, fulfill those responsibilities. Or not fulfill those responsibilities, but just, be there for my in-laws, be there for my husband, and because for them it was just too hard. They couldn't
Mhm.
even, um, could he even imagine like this person was gone, let alone deal with all the necessary steps it takes to, ready them for their journey. And then I kind of, so I got that from my native community and like how you said about it not being earned. Uh, and it was interesting because I felt like there's that conversation that her grandma had with her about she knew how they felt about each other and she knew, that Buffy was going through something. There was something going on there. And just saying, she was kind of like encouraging her, like, I know you, not saying it like word out, like, I know you've been through something, but um, this is your chance to, be happy. And kind of like doing it in a way that's like culturally relevant. But in terms of the death and how everything worked out, Uh, yeah, it was I didn't know what to think about that because I don't know if it was something that culturally that maybe because she's his significant other that she does, or maybe she just understood. And I kind of got that from the conversation he has with Pear, and he was like, I can't, I can't do it. Like she's just been like it's already been. It was just enough, like for us to see, her leave and now we have to deal with everything afterwards. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's kind of like maybe I was missing a little bit, or maybe I was just reading too much into it. But I don't know. It's kind of like what I got from it. But I feel like that part also could have been maybe drawn out a little bit more because
Yeah.
it was fast. It like all these things were just happening. Like I felt like the plot, or not the plot, but the pacing there was just boom, 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 boom. I kind of wish it slowed down a little bit. Um,
Yeah, I think that was like like an overall issue because I don't know. I feel like I'm probably just repeating, like echoing what you're saying. I I guess when I picked up the book, I thought it was going to be more like boiled down to like what's going on in the workplace, but instead the author kind of has us everywhere, and
mhm.
that kind of made what was going on feel rushed. Like it would have been nice if she had more time with Santiago's grandma, because it was so rushed, like you're saying. It just made this portion just feel like disjointed, and I felt like, well, maybe Buffy's transferring all her, like it's transference. It's just she has so much that she's feeling and holding back. So maybe that's what that moment was really about. But it didn't. It was unfortunate that I felt like it didn't really work for me. But Paula says something. She says, the two of you are like two magnets pushing and pulling and constantly hyper aware of each other. And I felt like I really liked that assessment of her being like on the outside and seeing that about them.
Hmm.
I don't know what you.
Yeah, and I saw that too, especially I didn't see that too much with her with Santiago, but I saw that definitely with Santiago with her. You know,
Mhm.
he knew exactly not when not to push. And he would, it was so reflective of that when, like, that first night, was it the first or the second night they stayed together? And he was making coffee and she freaked out. She was like, oh my God. And he was like, I already drink mine. I already drink my coffee. This is yours. And then he just leaves because he knows, like, he doesn't want to push her. He doesn't want to freak her out because he already knows she's like a runner. She's gonna run away from him. And so he's doing all these things and he's very hyper aware of her. So I felt like he was more like that to her, like seeing like where her needs were at. And, um, but for him, sometimes she would be like that. Like, because remember there was times where she was speaking in her head where she's like, no, no, no. And then she would be like, yeah. Or she'd be like, okay, I'll go eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So she
yeah,
would,
yeah.
yeah, like he would, like you could tell she was like hungry, or she would say she was starving and all this stuff. And then he would bring food for her, and then she was just like, no, I can't eat. I don't want to eat. I don't want to go on a date. But then she also knew like she had to give too in
Yeah.
order to keep getting the benefits that she wanted because she had to give him a little bit something and that was like her eating, which is kind of funny, and her like what was the other thing?
I feel like he
I don't
has
know.
like food on a hook and he's just like throwing it and then like reeling it.
She's using food as a way to reel her in. But yeah, it was just funny. I feel like that dynamic and that was something that about this book too, because then I was going through it and I was like, oh my God, I'm already halfway. Like, what's gonna happen? So I kind of wish this book was fleshed out a little bit more, was longer, it took time to build these characters. But the way the plot happened, I don't think I would change any of it. I wouldn't change nothing. I liked how everything played out. It's just I needed more filler, you know? Like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me in the back of my head, I could understand why Buffy was the way she was. And to be honest, I think I'm Buffy. That I'm
yeah.
definitely I feel like I saw myself a
Mm.
lot in Buffy. Probably the only thing I didn't see myself in Buffy is I'm not tall, I don't have red hair, and because I actually work in a nonprofit. Um, I work, and even all the way through college, I worked for the Boys and Girls Club in a Native community. Right now, I work in a nonprofit uh, that works to end violence against Native women and sex trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, gender-based violence crimes, basically. And so I get it, but and I don't know. So I feel like it, which is kind of sad. I feel like
Yeah.
this book. So I'm gonna definitely gonna message Danny. I'm gonna be like, Danny, why are you peeking into my bio? So I run that back and you say that to Danny. I'm like, come on, Danny. But anyway, um, but yeah, I just wish there was a little bit more like conversations that like I'm not being told every little thing. There's not a lot of info dumping, but just being shown what is going on with these characters through conversations, through interactions with other family, even like her visiting his work to see how hectic it is. Because I have a friend and she is an immigration lawyer and she has no life. Like she is like her office is just stacks and stacks of files everywhere. Um, like she hardly ever eats, and when she does, she just has food all over herself. But and that kind of job is stressful too. So I kind of
Yeah.
wish I kind of dived in both of these their backgrounds and their life a little bit more. Um, so and then I also wish like what you said, like some of this was
Mhm.
brought into the second book. Yeah, because I see a lot that I see that a lot happening with sequels, and for me it gets annoying because I'm like, I already know all this. I read the first book already, and I'm like,
Right.
I already they're just doing a whole repeat. But now I get why they do that. Because I've
Yeah.
actually read a few books this year where, uh, like it says, oh, you don't have to read this book in order to read this one, but you'll enjoy it more, or you'll get more out of the characters. So you'll dig more into their backgrounds. And I did that with one book, and I just read this second series, or like the second story, kind of like this one. They're not connected. It's not like a one, two, three, four, but there's characters that cross over. And then later on, I read the other book, the one that was written before, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I read this first? So I felt,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
it
that's
was
how I feel
so
about
good.
this. I wish I had read Lizard Holds the Sun first. I think that would have
Mhm.
made more sense to me. But I know time's getting away from us. I have two more questions and I'll let you go. I know you're busy. Um, there's side characters, Camilla and Elena. By the end, uh, they're still okay. By the end, I think it's Elena, right? Or Camilla.
Mhm.
One of them is stringing the other one along in their relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, and I wanted to hear that Elena dumped Camilla by then. How did you feel about that side
Oh,
relationship?
oh, the situationship.
Yeah, yes.
Oh my gosh. And didn't they say they were in that situationship for like 10 years or something, or 9?
Yeah,
It was
for a
it was a
long time.
long time. So I don't know, like, but I'm not gonna say anything because I actually know people who've been in who've been in situationships for even longer. So I'm not gonna say like, oh yeah, they should have done because I don't know. But there was a
But
part of me that I kind of wish I got to meet Elena. Like, is that going to be the third book? Like kind of
oh,
setting it
that's
up for
true.
the third book. Yeah, I was like, well, maybe it's purposeful that Danny's not writing about Elena and who they are, because maybe that's going to be the next book.
Okay,
Um,
that makes more sense.
yeah, but I think Camilla is in this book too, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Um, I can't remember if Camilla's in this book. I think she might be, but I don't remember. And then yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of thought, but that's another thing too. I think Camilla's also kind of like lying to themselves because they're not dating anybody else.
Mhm.
I feel like they're kind of like have this understanding with Alina that it's just them two too. But I don't know, because
Yeah.
we weren't given enough detail.
Okay. By the ending, the characters get married immediately. That I don't really think was earned either. That was like total whiplash for the characters that had I felt like have a lot of works to do like on themselves, but then like together. Um, because there was like a lot of like pretending who they are rather than being themselves that doesn't like warrant stepping into marital bliss just yet. I just needed more breadcrumbs from the beginning that would have gone them to that point. What did you think about that part?
Yeah, like it's interesting because this book, um, they're not married, but they definitely. I think she moves to Spain to be with him. I think it's just, I actually thought by the time this second book would be here that they would be married, but they weren't. Um, but I think it kind of just reminded me of how she's been through the whole entire book is just very impulsive and
Yeah.
just like jumping at things. But I also understand where she, I don't know, because I've seen this. Uh, with people where they just feel like they know when they're like, oh, okay, I'll just figure out all the really hard stuff later. But this is like an easy thing. We could do this stay together. But yeah, I feel like I wish they kind of I wish that was written in the epilogue, like just him proposing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would have kind of made me a little bit happier. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, this kind of like is pretty much part of like her character, who she is, and you can just tell by him, he's just desperate to be with her. Like I don't think he ever questioned whether he loved her or not since he first laid eyes on her. I feel like it was just a very um, love at first sight kind of thing for
Yeah.
him. But for her, it was just interesting for her to just like, let's just get married, let's just do it. So I thought that was kind of funny. But I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
I was on the side of Pear because Pear went danced with Buffy and was like, I don't know about you.
I don't trust you. You're not from my guy. Oh yeah, definitely. Shoot, if that was like my family, they would be like, no, sorry. Like, no. But yeah, I don't know. So that was another surprise too. I think that kind of surprised me. I thought they were just gonna have like happily ever after where it was just open ended. Okay, they're together. They're gonna start dating, you know. But it wasn't. It was just like another curveball, and I was like, oh, okay. Like I wasn't mad at it. It was like I didn't predict that was gonna happen. I just thought she was just gonna say ha ha ha, like laugh it off and be like, no, we're not getting married. Are you crazy? Like maybe like 40 years down the line, I kind of thought she was gonna tease and say something like that, but then to have the flip side happen. So I thought it was kind of like a nice surprise. So, but yeah,
Surprise, surprise.
surprise, surprise. I wasn't mad at it. So I was just kind of like, oh, like, but I was just like, oh, this is really happening. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it should have been an epilogue and like a time jump and kind of like if the author really wants that to be in there, but to just not let it be like right when they kind of like are finally like on the same page.
Hmm.
But
What I thought was going to happen. So, okay, here's Kim's version of this whole story. So I thought, I thought what was going to happen was like, okay, uh, they get into this big old argument, right, about this other person she went on a date with. And then she cools off, they kind of work things out. And then the next part was going to be they fly to, remember, because they keep texting her and bugging her, when are you coming back for Christmas? And
yeah.
then they have a whole full on blowout when she
Mhm.
takes him over there. And
Yeah.
then something happens to his grandma while he's not there,
Mm.
and then she doesn't go back, and then her whole family gets pissed off at her, and then she's like, oh, I'm not going back. But yeah, that's kind of like what I thought was gonna happen. I was like, I bet you this is what's gonna happen, but I was wrong. So that's kind of like what I thought was gonna happen. But yeah,
All right. Request for some name drops for these native memes that we can try to understand.
I see. Oh, China, where's my phone at? Let me see. I think one person you could probably. I was just watching him the other day. Is this Navajo guy? I can't remember. What was his name? I always just see him. He just wears a cowboy hat, and he has like a sheep puppet named Sandwich.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny because the sheep's neck is all red right here. Because that's what we butcher a lot out here. Sheep and his neck's all cut open. But yeah, mm, Sandwich. I don't know. You just gotta go on like if you just do the hashtag like native TikTok.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll find like a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, it's called his 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 TikTok is called Cross Your Path, like KROSSYOUR path. Cross Your Path. I think that's his TikTok.
All right. There you go, Margaret.
Yeah, but if you just do a native like the hashtag native TikTok, you'll probably find all kinds of stuff. So funny. Yeah. Let me see this one. I don't know what the hashtags are for
Mm.
these. But yeah, some of them are just like Like some of them you won't get at all unless you're like from that area. You're like, what? I don't get why this is funny. But yeah, you're just like, huh? I don't get it. Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, where was I? All right. Thank you, everyone who attended, anybody watching in the replay. Thank you, Kim, for being here and taking the time to chat about this book. This was an absolute joy to partake in. Um, do you have any parting words? Anything going on your Instagram or anything else that you want to share?
Um, oh, I think in a couple weeks, I'm actually for my work. I work for a not native nonprofit called the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. And I'm actually going to be interviewing two Native authors on how their Native literature is not only putting a spotlight on colonial violence, but also how they're inspiring um, Native community with female heroines or just like Native heroines overall, and the importance of seeing, your indigenous or your maybe identity, and to see that reflected in literature and how important it is and how important storytelling is. And those authors are Marcy R. Rendon and
Oh, hey. Okay.
yeah, and Romana Emerson, who wrote
Okay.
Shutter. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's going to be
Ah,
happening. I'll probably share
exciting.
something on my Instagram, but if you just follow NIWRC on Insta, I think they should have a post out by now. But I'm definitely I'm like really into like native thriller, suspense, mystery. So I'm gonna be reading Marcy Armendon's book coming up next called Last Time We Saw Her. I think that's what it's called.
Mhm.
And then Marcy Armendon's also coming out with a new Cash Blackberry book. Oh, I'm so excited. And then Ramona's Emerson's
Yeah.
second book for Shutter. I have that one right now, which is called Exposure. I think it came out in October last month. So I'm going to be reading that. Yeah, so I'm like, and then of course, there's another one. I think it's a native YA. I think it's called Looking for Smoke. So that one's another yeah, I think within this next month or two, I'm probably gonna dive deep into like mystery thriller and a lot of native YA. So yeah, but not really anything big. I'll probably be doing another post for the following year for uh Studis Readathon, which is a um year-long bookstagram challenge for reading more native authored lit. Yeah, this past year it was everybody's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Because then I'd be like, okay, you have to read a book that has four letters or four syllables or four layers of the title, and it has to be read between this month and this month, you know, or
Yeah.
or read this native book, but you have to read it consistently for 5 days. So I have those kinds of challenge. I'm kind of want to be a little bit do that kind of be creative again, and for this coming year for just the Instagram community engaging in native author lit. So that post should probably be coming out next month.
Oh, I'll look out for it. One last question because I can't help myself. Did you have a chance to read And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott?
No, I haven't, but
I think you
I
like it since you say you like thrillers. It's kind of like a whole bunch of different genres together, but I
yeah,
think
I heard
you
it's
would like
like a mix of like native horror
it.
and suspense, and no, I never got an arc, so I don't have that book yet. But yeah, usually all the books that I read are usually books that I get from the publishers or the library. And of
Mhm.
course, Alicia Elliott, isn't she an indigenous author in Canada? So I
Yes.
haven't seen that book in the library because of course we're in the
Oh, okay.
lower 48. Yeah, so
Mhm.
um I'll probably get my hands on that book, probably because I think Book Outlet is doing a sale right now. And I'm only buying like a few books.
No, me too.
Yeah, I try to keep my book uh, purchases, if I can't get them on Libby or whatever. Those are the only times. I'll purchase a book. If I can't get them on Libby, the library, if I can't get them through, ARC request, then I'll purchase. But most of the time, I just try to like, okay, Kim, your TBR is already like 10 miles high. You'll be okay. But yeah, I recently got the Everend app, and I think the audiobook's on there. But yeah, so hopefully I can check that out and get to that book too. But Alicia Elliott, oh man, so good. Alicia Elliott's such a good writer.
All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a lovely next month. And I'll be looking out for those interviews. It's it's going to be so great to watch. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
Bye,
Later.
everyone.
Bye.